I am Kat Roedell, the author of 5 Powerful Tools for Personal Growth. I wrote this book over a 3-year period. Yeah, but it's tight and it's concise. And it talks about the 5 powerful tools that we can use to grow ourselves. Those tools are gratitude, boundaries, prayer, accountability, and forgiveness. And it doesn't just talk about the tools, it actually gives you exercises to use in order to grow those things in our life. Because all so often we're told, oh, you just need to forgive. But if you don't know how to do that, you're not going to forgive. You're going to get stuck. So this book is designed to be worked in a group study, or you can do it individually or with a friend. But in order to remain accountable, it's always good to have at least 1 or 2 people that are working with you or know that you're working with you, so you actually do the work. Because I have found in my life that when there's hard stuff I got to do inside, it's easy to forget. So tonight I'm going to talk about gratitude, and it's actually one of the last chapters in the book. But I wrote the chapter when I was in the hospital. One day, my dad had a bad diagnosis at the doctor, and I was cooking chili that night on a propane stove, wearing a nice flannel shirt. And I reached across the stove to turn on the timer, and my sleeve caught on fire. I don't know if you know, but flannel is like tinder. It just goes whoosh. So I looked down, and my entire right side was engulfed. And I tried yelling, and nobody in the house heard me. I ran over to the kitchen sink. I tried to spray it off to stop it. That didn't work. And audibly, I heard stop, drop, and roll. And I'm like, I am 56 years old. If I do that, I may not get up again, but it's better than being on fire. So I stopped, I dropped, I rolled. Everybody in the house came at that same moment. And the next day, I was in the emergency room with 3rd-degree burns. My dad was in the same ER getting a scan to see what was going on with his stomach, and it ended up that he had pancreatic cancer. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and I had to have 3 skin grafts. But the second night I was in there, the first night I was in ER, and I had to sleep in ER. There wasn't any room for me. I was down at Mass General in the burn unit. In New Hampshire, we have no burn units. Just long and short of it, this is a problem with rural areas. So at the same time I'm going through this process, I know that my dad has got pancreatic cancer, and I'm kind of grieving. The second night I was in the hospital, I woke up, and I'd already started working on this book. I'd written the chapter on forgiveness. I had started on some accountability and some boundaries. I kind of wrote the book in little pieces and chunks. But I woke up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, really, God? Gratitude? And he says, yes. He said, gratitude is your weapon, it's your sword, and it's your cane. It's going to carry you through the rough times, and it's going to cut through the bullshit and other times. And you have to learn how to use it. So at that moment, I said very clearly, I said to God, okay, you want me to write this chapter? I'm going to write it. And no one who comes into my room at this hospital is going to leave feeling worse than they did when they came in. It was a choice I made to be grateful and to extend that gratitude to the people that were helping me. You know, after 3 days, people just started wandering into my room. And they'd say, hey, Kat, I'm getting off of my shift, but I wanted to see you before I left. Or they just, I was walking by and I wanted to see how you were doing. And I got changed from that first room up into the burn unit, you know, and like I said, I was there for 3 weeks, and I had 3 major surgeries during that time. And every day was another lesson in how to be grateful. Number one, I was grateful that I was alive. Obviously, I could have died from a secondary infection very quickly because over 20% of my body was burned. And I could have died because I had diabetes. And when you're a diabetic, you don't recover as quickly from things like that, but I healed very fast. And they were kind of marveling at how fast I healed. When I got let out 2 months later, I was out of all the treatment. So that was very quick for what I went through. And I still have some repercussions. This is 3 years later, but I'm grateful. So when I got this download about not making anybody feel worse about what they did, who they were, what they were doing than when they came in, I had to learn some things about expressing gratitude. So you start with saying very quickly, thank you, right? Or I appreciate you. And I'm going to go back and touch on this gift in a moment. But the first thing about being grateful is writing down 10 I am grateful statements. And the reason I tell you to write them down is if you are not in a crisis right now, and you start to write the 10 I am grateful for statements, you're going to be far more creative when you are in normal time than you will if you're in a crisis. So if you write down 10 I am grateful statements when you are in a normal time, and if you're not, you can ask a friend to help you brainstorm. There's no crime in that. No, we're not always the most creative, and sometimes we just can't think until we start to do it, and then we get rolling. But when we write it in our rest time, in that time we feel good, then when we're having a crisis, we're prepared because we already have our 10 statements written out. And if we're going through and we find something else that we're grateful for, we write it on that list. So we could have as many as 50, 60, 100 I am grateful for statements. And you don't have to read them all out loud. But it is great to have them available so when you feel a need or you want to lift your spirit, you can use those statements. And they're very easy. They are just, I am grateful for the sun. I am grateful for my journey with God. I am grateful for the people in my life. But every time we say, I am grateful for, and we add something to the end, our brain hears it. And now God crafted our brains to be miraculous. And when they hear something come out of our mouth, the brain believes it's truth. And it starts to act on that truth. So the acting on the truth means that after 10 times, the serotonin drops, the dopamine drops, and we start to feel better because we're grateful. And our brain knows we're grateful. So it responds and says, okay, here's the happy ones that come in, all the happy chemicals that need to come in. So I knew about that before I went through the whole thing with the burn. I knew about the 10 I am grateful for statements. I'd learned them several years before when I was doing Mary Kay and learning how to reset my mind. I'd use them with my clients doing business consulting and coaching and mentoring people to be more top performers. But I realized something special while I was in the hospital. I had a skin graft. I had several skin grafts, but they took skin off of my right thigh. In probably about 50% of my thigh, the skin was removed. And when they put a bandage on that, it's a wet wound that they call it. And the bandage adheres to it very, very well. And it does not come off very easily when you need a dressing change. And they just tell you to grin and bear it. They're not going to give you any drugs to stop you from hurting. They're just going to try to do it as quick as possible. So I was in this teaching hospital. We had the big kahuna doctor there and all of this little pod of junior doctors that were interns and learning how to do their job. And so my room was full of about 8, 9 people and the 2 nurses that were helping me. And they're taking off my bandages. So what's the first thing I said is the second it started to hurt? I am grateful for doctors. And they all laughed. They thought, well, I was just being funny. And then a little bit later, I said, I am grateful for any kind of bandage that ends in Lex. Curlex, Keflex, Adaptex, any kind of X bandage, because those are the super bandages that they created to help you heal wonderfully well from a burn or a major injury. And they giggled again because, I was being funny. And then I said, I'm grateful for the nurses. I'm grateful for the good quality care. The more statements I said I was grateful for, the less they giggled. And they started to look at me in a different way. After that was done, I realized after 10 statements, they were still peeling bandages off, but I wasn't feeling any pain because my mind had done its trick. And it didn't just lift me up inside and make me emotionally happy. It was actually physically shifting how I felt. So can you imagine being in a hospital? You've been in there, they're looking at you, you're hooked up to IVs and pumps and everything else, and you're telling the doctors that you're grateful. Do you realize that most of those pod of students came back to check on me after the fact when I wasn't on their rounds? They just came in to see how I was doing because they realized there was something different. So when we walk in gratitude, there is something different about who we are and what we profess to be that shifts the atmosphere. Gratitude can change things. Like I said before, it was my cane. I leaned on it when I was feeling down and when I couldn't get places. And it was also my sword. It cut through things that I couldn't have done on my own. God was there with me in that gratitude. So the 10 I am grateful for statements is your first assignment, your first exercise to learn how to be grateful. And like I said before, have a friend, write them down when you're feeling creative. Just get a list prepared. So if anything happens, you've already thought about what you're grateful for. You don't have to think about it. You just need to say it. Because that stops any excuse in our heads. It's if we prepare, if we plan, it stops the excuse of why we can't do something. And you can choose to live in a positive state or a negative state. Your choice. I choose positive, and I've seen such changes in my life when I made that radical decision to walk in positivity. Now, I hear a lot, oh, you're just an optimist. No, actually, I'm a pragmatist. Being an optimist means that I'd always look for the bright side. I tend to do that, but a pragmatist means that I look at the best way to get to where I want to go in order to get there. So as a pragmatist, having my 10 I am grateful for statements helps me to be the best top performer I want to be, but also to be the best person I want to be. Now, we can't have gratitude. I don't believe that we can have gratitude without having a faith in a higher power. I will radically say I'm a Christian. I don't care to step back from that, but this works for anybody. It doesn't just work for Christians. If you are grateful, your brain will respond to it. But having the trust in God makes it easier to get grateful for some of these things. So the second exercise, and that was given to me actually by the one of the chaplains in the hospital. She talked to me about God boxes. And I'm like, a God box, what a great idea. And it's just a little box. Let me see if I've got one here. I do. Just a little box. It doesn't have to be big. You know, I made these myself. I hand painted them. In the little box, you put slips of paper about the things you can't let go of, the things you don't trust God with, and you put them in that box. And when you close the box, guess who's got them? You don't go back. You can come back in a couple of months, and then I would encourage you to look through your God box and find all the things that have been answered. Because things change. When we're in a dark place, we don't think anything will ever change. And that dark place is this place between our two ears. because we're wired to respond to emergencies. So we will always see the emergency that's arising, and very rarely can we see the goodness and the blessings. So in order to build trust with God, first we got to give things to him, and we can't take them back, because when we take them back, we haven't given them to him, right? Yeah, God, take this. Oh, no, wait. Give me that back. I might have carried that load again. So after a couple of months in your God box, then I want you to open it. Take out those things that have happened, that have been resolved. And I want you to put those slips of paper in what I call a joy jar. Could be a rainbow jar. It could be whatever you want to call it. But something clear that you can see through, that you can store slips of paper in. Doesn't have to be big, maybe about this tall. You could have smaller ones, shorter ones, taller ones. But what I want to happen is when something beautiful happens in your life, when something in your God box gets answered, or you go down the road, you see a double rainbow or a triple rainbow, or you find $50 on the floor, or you found $100 in your coat pocket that you were going to throw out, whatever it might be, you write down enough on a slip of paper to remind you of what that blessing was. And when you put the blessing into your joy jar, what happens is when you have a hard day, you can just look across the room and you can see how the blessings have been growing throughout the year. You can visually see that things have changed, that good things have happened. And when we're in a dark space, we think nothing good has happened and we can't remember those good things. But if they're written down and they're visual, then our brain sees them and responds accordingly. And again, it shifts our mood. I'm happy because these good things happen and God answered my prayers. And not only did he answer my prayers, but he provided for me on this day, and he did this thing on that day. And if you're really having a rough day, you empty out all those slips of paper and you start reading about the blessings that God has provided. And then you put them back in the jar to remind you for another day. And this trains us to get out of this reactive state in our head and moving into a proactive state where we train our brain to be responsive creatively in all situations. Now we can be reactive and then everything's a fire and there's all sorts of big drama and oh, this happened and I can't believe this. Or we can be creative and say, God is always good all the time. He has plans to prosper me, not to harm me. And if he shares with me and grows my trust by those little things every single day, it doesn't even have to be every day. It could be once a week, once a month. But he's growing my trust by providing for me. And I'm growing my relationship with him by learning how to give things to him and allowing him to work instead of saying, woe is me. So the fourth exercise in building gratitude is called the gift of exhortation. I call it the gift of exhortation. It's feeding into other people. And what you do with the gift of exhortation is you look at somebody else and you say, Liz, I really like the color of your shirt today. That lavender really shows off your color tone. And your haircut is just fabulous. And you exude joy when you walk into the room. And Priscilla, you are always so polished. Every time I see you, you always have matching clothes and this image of professionalism and excellence wherever you walk. And both of you, I've seen you both pour into other people. And I've heard you be blessings to other people. And it is such a joy to have you here tonight, helping me put on my best presentation face. So thank you both for being here. Now, what I did when I used that gift of exhortation is I took myself out of my own head and I focused on helping somebody else feel better about themselves. And you know, when you do that, people start coming back. They want more because our world is so dark, especially on a burn ward unit, right? There's so many people in pain, screaming. There's some people that foster their burn injuries, and they make sure that they get infections so they can get drugs. So you've got drug abusers, you've got people with mental health issues, you've got all sorts of people in a hospital. And it can be a very, very dark place. So it was no wonder that people started coming into my room, because I always fed them when they were there. And I was laying in a bed in pain. I was laying in a bed recovering. But you know what? How much does it hurt me to say nice things to people? It doesn't. It makes me feel better. Gets me out of this place and into this other place where I am looking at each person that comes into my pathway as an individual and treating them with gratitude for whatever. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have people that get on our nerves. We have people who get on our nerves. There are people in this life that we rub up against, and they are burrs. They poke into us, and we poke into them, and the conflict actually, if we learn how to reconcile, will help us both become stronger people. And that's another part of growth, is learning how to get along with others, even if you don't really like them. But the truth is, the more we operate in gratitude, the easier life becomes, because people around us start to notice it. And they start to shift their perspective around you. And when people shift their perspective around you, you start to hear more compliments too. And you start to get fed by feeding other people. I would say it's probably one of the primary steps in learning how to be a great minister, if that's what you're called to do. But it is a primary step in learning how to be a great person, no matter what you are called to do. Great leaders invest in the people around them. And if you're called to be a great leader, or you say you want to be a great leader, then you have to learn how to exercise gratitude as a cane and as a sword. So I thank you all for being here tonight, and I appreciate the fact that you were such great listeners. And we're going to have another time next month to do probably prayer. We're going to work on prayer next month. So tune in again. It will be the same general time on a Tuesday night, 6:45, 7 o'clock. And I will try to post on YouTube and Facebook beforehand so people know about it instead of just dropping it on the live stream. But thank you all.